Welcome. We are live for our very first live stream Q&A to answer all of your financial aid questions. My name is Sharday Campbell. I handle the social media and communications for financial aid, and I am so excited that we are going to be able to drop all this free game for you all about how to fund your education. So we have a team of experts here that are going to be joining me, ranging from financial aid advisors and managers, to answer all your pressing questions. And while we discuss the most asked questions in financial aid, you can drop your questions below, like right there. Don't be shy. Tell us what you need to know. And we have a team of experts also answering those questions. So we are going to kick things off, and we're going to talk about a range of topics. But the first thing we're going to talk about is financial aid eligibility. What makes you eligible for financial aid? We're going to talk about financial aid for full-time and part-time students, and we're also going to talk about 10 different types of aid. Yes, like 10, 10. I know y'all thought it was just like grants, loans, and scholarships. So joining me for this first segment, I have Tanya Gaddis.
Hello.
Hello. And Lyndon Smith.
Hi, how you doing?
And they are both financial aid advisors at our campus that help our students every day navigate the financial aid process. Thank you for coming out.
Well, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So one thing we find with students, because HCC is so affordable, shameless plug, that they say, you know what, I'm going to just save up, pay my money out of pocket. I don't have to go through this whole financial aid process, because we've heard a lot about where they don't think they qualify when they come part-time. So we want to talk a little bit about what type of student qualifies for financial aid.
Well, pretty much any student that completes the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid online, is eligible for some type of aid, whether it's grants, loans, and loans are considered aid. A lot of students think that student loans are not considered aid, but it is. Any type of institutional grants and Workstudy, they all qualify for that. And it's just based off of the income information that's inputted into the student's FAFSA when they complete it.
Great. So you heard that, right? If you're coming to school, fill out the FAFSA.
Exactly.
But the other financial aid application that they may be eligible to apply for undocumented students,
that would be the TASFA.
Yes.
So that would be just go ahead. Have that one on there.
Well, the TASFA aid is for, as you just mentioned, are for students that are undocumented. They would receive a state grant. They would have to be enrolled in at least 6 hours to receive the aid.
We can get a little bit deeper into like what it takes to receive the aid, but I just wanted to make sure that undocumented students, like off top, knew that they had an option. We will refer to the FAFSA a lot during these segments, but the application for the TASFA is pretty much almost like the FAFSA. It's just that you are applying through the state for state aid.
Correct.
Okay, so for federal aid. So federal aid is what you are applying for when you fill out the FAFSA.
The FAFSA, correct.
What requirements or what is required? What is required to fill out that application?
So basically, the student has to be a permanent resident or a citizen, U.S. citizen. Okay, so that's first and foremost. And so for the federal aid, basically, when the student enrolls, and the student may say, well, I'm not taking full-time hours or 12 credit hours, I just want to come half-time. Well, that's fine. Students can qualify for half-time, which is 6 to 8 credit hours, quarter-time, which is 9 to 11 credit hours, or 12 credit hours or more is full-time. But basically, in order for them to receive grants, if they're eligible for grants, they can be in as many credit hours as they want to take. But for loans, to qualify for loans, you have to be in at least 6 credit hours to qualify for loans.
Okay, perfect.
No.
Lyndon, tell us a little bit about, she touched on being a permanent resident. I know also you have to, for the males, the selective service. So what are some other things that students have to consider before they fill out the FAFSA?
Well, as a male, between the age of 18 and 25, they would have to register with selective service because that's required by the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you all go out to high schools often and talk to students and walk them through the financial aid process. Right. So So they're there and they say, I don't know if I'm eligible for financial aid. Should I fill out the application? Like,
Of
what
course.
what would you tell them?
Yes, we always encourage the student to fill out the FAFSA application because we're not able to determine what it is until the application is done.
Exactly.
Majority of the time, they do qualify for the aid, but it's just filling out the application to let us know if you qualified. So it doesn't hurt to fill out the application at all. Actually, it helps you.
Awesome. So for our high school graduates, that there's this period where they fill out the financial aid application, but they may not have their diploma yet. What is that? Should they fill out the application before they get their diploma?
They can fill out the application before they get their diploma, but then once they receive their diploma, then they will go ahead and submit. They can go in and do a correction to their FAFSA at any point in time. They can go in and do a correction, or they would have to present that information to the school once their application has been received.
Gotcha. And so when we look a little deeper, there are students who are looking to start over, like community college is a place to start over. What if students may be worried about filling out the application if they've been convicted of a previous crime?
That will not stop them. I mean, we're able to, if they would like to come into the campus, and we could help them to complete the FAFSA, but there's always, whether they've been incarcerated or have convictions on their record or whatever, they're still eligible to complete the FAFSA, and depending on certain qualifications that they've met or stipulations, we would determine then at that time what they would qualify for.
Linda, you look like you wanted to say something.
Pertaining to that, if they were convicted of a crime or whatever the case may be, there's drop-down boxes that tells them to go further. And also there's a portion where they complete a certification program, and you bring in that certification program stating that you completed the program, and they'll be okay with that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. What about, we talked a little bit about undocumented students. What about having a social security number? And maybe their parents may not have a social security number. How do y'all handle the social security number with the eligibility?
Are we talking about an undocumented, or are we talking about a student who was born in the U.S., have a social, and their parents doesn't have a social? Well, we still tell the students to do the application. Mm-hmm. They would put in all zeros for their parents, put their last name, their date of birth, and also they would have to print the signature page, and we would mail the signature page out.
Gotcha. See, you said, well, which one are you talking about? You covered all of it. You got it together. All right, so fill out the application. What am I applying for? What types of aid are students eligible for? You all kind of touched on it a bit. We definitely know about grants, loans. Tell us about the different types of federal grants for the FAFSA.
Okay, the Pell Grant, which is entitlement, and then we also have the SEOG, which is a Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. That's majority of the students who meet the priority deadline, they're in a pool for that. And then we also have the College Workstudy, while the students can work on campus or off campus, earn an income, and gaining experience, and it's in between your classes.
Right. So you have federal, you have the Pell Grant, and you have the SEOG, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, right. And those are need-based. And what we see is, the Pell is guaranteed, right? But the SEOG, right, that money goes quickly.
Yes. Right.
And so it's best if you are looking and you know that, hey, I have a high need that I need to cover my costs for schools. You need to fill out that application early. We didn't really talk about filling it out.
Right. Right. I was just getting ready to say that. So the earlier that they fill it out, and the application for the new school year is always available October 1st of every year. So basically, this school year we're getting ready to go into is the 2020-2021 school year. So that application actually opened up October 1st of 2019. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it confuses the students because they're thinking the application kind of confuses them. It's like, okay, am I supposed to do 2019? I'm supposed to do 2020. And so when you're looking at it, 2020 is considered the fall, And then 2021 is considered your spring semester, which starts in January. So once you complete it, it's for the whole school year, which covers you from August all the way through May. And then you have the summer session in between, which kind of ends the school year as well. But the earlier you fill it out, the more you may qualify for, whether it's institutional or state grants or whatever money is available through the school as well, not only just your federal funds.
Perfect. So October 1st, you can start filling out the FAFSA. I know the Department of Education just sent another reminder saying, hey, if you haven't filled out your 2021 FAFSA, go ahead and get that in. We just talked about the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant maybe at, if you don't meet that deadline, you may miss out on money on the table.
Right.
And so now, if you wanted to come to school in the summer, that's not 2021. 2021 application is if you want to come in August.
Right.
You have to fill out the 1920.
You have to fill out the 1920. So essentially, you would be doing two applications, because while you're doing one, you might as well go ahead and do the other. So if you haven't been all year, you didn't come in the fall, didn't come in the spring, but you do want to come in the summertime, just complete the 2019-2020 FAFSA. But while you're online, go ahead and do the 2020-2021. And also, I just wanted to add, I know that they'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but it's your tax information that will be reported for the 2019-2020 school year would be 2017 income tax for that year, and then you would have to have 2018 tax information available for the 2020-2021 school year.
Awesome. So briefly, couple other types of aid that you touched on. Workstudy. I just want to be clear. Workstudy is a type of financial aid. You get a certain amount of money and you work up and you get paid every 2 weeks. So it's not like, oh, I have to take this money, pay for my education. We understand that you have a life and life costs.
Right,
So
exactly.
You get to work on campus, and these hiring managers understand that you have to go to class, right? And so other types of aid, scholarships, that's huge.
Yes.
One thing that we started doing, if you go to hccs.edu/scholarships, we share monthly scholarships that have been curated specifically for community college students to fill out. The HCC Foundation application is open, and so you can apply through our foundation for scholarship funds. One thing HCC does too, though, we have emergency aid for students who are facing financial emergencies.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to throw that plug out there. We're going to have our financial coaches come and talk about that a little bit later. And we're also going to be talking about that free degree program.
All right, the Promise program.
Yes, the Promise program. You know, earn your degree for free at HCC. And so, are there any other types of aid? Did we get everything? We talked about state grants.
Yeah.
We talked about, one thing people don't realize is that when you fill out the application, you say, oh, well, I'm gonna just qualify for loans. No. A lot of schools have what's called institutional aid. So the school offers financial aid and scholarships that require that you fill out the application for financial aid, right?
Because that means, students that may not, they kind of go back and look at students that said, okay, well, this student could use a little bit more, or just based off of sometimes even filling your FAFSA out early qualifies you for more institutional aid, because they say, oh, okay, this student was on top of it. They were able to, and it's just dispersed to students through the college. So basically they're saying, okay, let me see, this student might need a little bit more need. We'll help them out a little bit more. So that's what the institutional aid is about. So there's always, ways to obtain aid through the FAFSA. So we tell every student, complete the FAFSA. It's not going to hurt you. It's a free application. Complete it. You never know what you may qualify for.
Awesome. Y'all dropped some great tips. We thank you so much for coming through, Tanya and Lyndon.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, they talked all about what it takes to be eligible for financial aid, but it's not easy. It may not be easy to fill out that application, right? So we are going to have another team of experts come and talk to you about what you need to consider when you're filling out your application. That's up next.
I have a big passion for law enforcement, and I want to help my community, give back to them. So this is why I chose HCC and get enrolled in their police academy. the journey to becoming an officer hasn't been easy. I got injured. I had several obstacles in academics, and I was not able to succeed. I was broken. I didn't accomplish a goal that I had set myself to, but that didn't stop me. I wanted to re-enroll again, but I couldn't because Harvey happened. My home was destroyed. I didn't have financial stability at the moment, so I could not come back to do the program again. So I spoke with Mr. Sims, and he suggested that I apply for a scholarship, and I did. I was awarded with a scholarship with the Houston Rodeo. I re-enrolled, and 3 days within the academy, I got a third-degree sprain. I was in crutches for 3 months, but I overcame that obstacle. I was not going to let another injury stop me from accomplishing my goal. Being in crutches for 3 months, I couldn't work, so I used my scholarship from the rodeo to be able to pay for my level 2. My perseverance and my commitment and my discipline paid off. I accomplished my goal. I graduated the police academy, and now I am in the hiring process with HCC Police Department. I want to thank the HCC faculty for seeing the potential in me and helping me achieve my goal.
Welcome back, welcome back. We are still live covering the most asked financial aid questions. Up next, we are going to cover filling out the application, filling out the right application, right, for the right aid year, and what tax information to use, and what else you should consider when you're filling out the financial aid application. Joining us, we have Arlene and Bruce, both from our campuses. Arlene is a financial aid coordinator. Bruce is a financial aid advisor. And y'all both got, y'all probably got a decade in the game at least between you all. So just know we have experienced experts here to answer your questions. So filling out the financial aid application, it can be intimidating, right? It's a new process. A lot of times students whose parents may not have went to school, they don't have the support at home to help that. So we want to talk a little bit about, we talked a little bit about in the last segment, filling out the application for the right aid year. So let me do this. Arlene, you covered 1920, and Bruce, you covered 2021. Yes. So go. Tell me what they need to know about 1920 and what that's for.
Okay. So 1920, you can still apply for it, even for this semester as well, because we do have classes that start in March. You can also apply for it for June, which is for our summer classes. You'll also be needing your 2017. This is going to be for your parents, for them to use your 2017 for your parents, and also for yourself if you did work. Again, this is for dependent and independent students.
So you're talking about, right, so you're talking about the 2017 tax information is what you need to fill out the 1920 application, which was for this past fall,
spring, and summer coming up.
Yeah, so summer is included in that.
Correct.
Okay, good deal. Bruce, if they don't want to come in the summer or right now, they say, hey, I want to start in August, what application should they fill out?
Students should be completing the 2021 FAFSA application. Of course, when you're completing the 2021 FAFSA application, you need to make sure you have your 2018 tax documents. I always tell students that it's so important when you're completing the FAFSA is that you have that tax information right there. Because later on, as you fill out the FAFSA and when they get to the IRS retrieval, there's some important information that you'll probably need when completing the FAFSA.
Yeah, because when you start filling it out, it's all personal information, your name, your date of birth, your social security. And of course, at the very beginning, you're going to start off with your FAFSA ID. I mean, we haven't touched about FAFSA ID. FAFSA ID is going to be an identification for you to open up the application you'll need an FSA ID for yourself and also for your parent if you are a dependent. If you're an independent, then it's just going to be yourself.
Right. So FSA, look, we made a joke before we started. We were like, we use a lot of acronyms in
Yes.
financial aid. So FSA basically stands for Federal Student Aid. And so you have to have a FSA ID. And if you are entering your parents' tax information, they have to have a FSA ID as well.
Yeah.
That is correct, but there's one part that you need to know. If the parent is a non-citizen, then of course they cannot do an FSA ID.
Gotcha. And we talked a lot about parents and students. Look, I'm grown, I'm 18, I'm handling my own. Look, they don't take care of me. Why I gotta put their information on there? Tell me.
With the government, you still are considered as a dependent to a parent. Even if they don't put you on your income tax, on their income tax, if you did your own income tax, you still have to include your parents. They have a age restriction, which is a 24 and up, that they'll consider you as an independent.
Interesting. I know that's just a point of confusion, contention for students.
It really is, because you find we deal with a lot of students that come in that's under the age of 24, and they say, well, I have a child. Yeah, I understand you have a child, but are you taking care of that child? That makes a difference.
Are you supporting them more than 51%?
Exactly.
So that goes into, we talked a little bit about before the segment started about how do you consider those special circumstances where a student may be able to not have to put their parents' income on their financial aid application. You talked about being able to prove that you support 50% of your child's expenses. There's like veterans, like what are those other situations? There are questions on the FAFSA that they ask.
Veteran, definitely, if you're a veteran, you can be an independent student. But the most important thing you got to understand, when you're putting this information on the FAFSA, you have to have documentation to support it. And that's what really makes everything confusing. I'm saying I'm a veteran, but if you cannot present a DD-214, then guess what? It messes with things. Right. The same way I go back to kids. You say you take care of your child. I mean, that's your child. You had a child, but the question we ask is, if mom is taking care of the child and you don't have an income, then the number one question we ask is, how are you supporting the child?
You kind of got to have some receipts here, and the government said we want to see. So a lot of times, students are frustrated that, specifically when they're applying to multiple schools, why do I have to provide and verify to all these different schools? Is because it's not the school, it's the government.
It's the government.
Like the financial aid is highly regulated by federal law. So we have to intake the verification that is required for us to be able, to still give up the students' aid.
Be able to fund you.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's where they take it personal, but it's nothing we're doing. It's something that the federal government states that in order for us to do these things, or in order to award the student, that we must have various documentation. So it's always federal regs that says this must be done.
So you talked about having to have, so if I fill out my FSA ID, I have my tax information, boom, I'm ready to fill out my FAFSA, or is there like some type of delay time? Like what happens?
No,
okay.
You can go ahead and once it's completed, it takes about 3 to 5 days to come into our program, and then from there it'll identify if you have to turn in some documents. We do a lot of communications to our students. By email is the most that we communicate with them, and it's telling them when we received your application, when we have need documentation, if you've been awarded, all that is communicated to the student.
And the other good thing about this, back when I used to go to school, you had to fill out the FAFSA and put it in the mail and wait a few days for them to get it. Today, things have changed. You can do it by mobile, you can do it on the internet, and you can do it by paper. you know,
You
it's just so many ways. You got so excuses are useless. So once again, you have so many opportunities or so many applications to use to get it done.
So one thing you talked about is the data retrieval tool.
Yes.
So there's an opportunity to for qualifying students to import their tax information into it. So that means you're not going to run into errors where you have to go and submit additional, documentation. It reduces that risk, right?
Exactly. Yes. We encourage students to use the data retrieval because if you don't use it, then you risking the opportunity of being selected for verification, which might require other documents. So my advice to you, use the data retrieval, transfer all the information, because if you transfer some of the information, then once again, you're risking the chance of being verified, going through a verification process again.
I also want to talk about the TASFA. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier with Ms. Tanya.
Thank you.
Lyndon. TASFA is only at the moment on paper.
Yes.
You can actually print out the application online. You can also go to the office and they'll have a printable one. And then the rest is all going to be, the taxes are also going to have to be included inside the TASFA. There are going to be also where a student has to do a statement of eligibility, and then also regarding an affidavit. That's with the school. You'll also have to bring your high school transcript as well.
Awesome. I know. So when they fill out a TASFA application, it's best they need to come into the office, because we only accept all of the documentation at one time for the state aid application for undocumented students.
That is correct.
And one thing I wanted to touch on is once you fill out that FAFSA, you need to fill out your admissions application.
That is
because
correct.
we have to link that up. So we're almost out of time, but I want to reiterate, we've almost been 100 high schools since last October. So we're out in the community educating people about how to fill out these financial aid applications, but they can also come to our offices, right?
Yes.
They can come and visit us. I mean, we have a lot of our offices are open from 8 to 6:30 Monday through Thursday, and also Fridays 8 to 5. We have staff there all day during those times that can assist you with both applications, the FAFSA and also the TASFA.
Awesome. Thank you. So if you're looking for our locations, you can go to hccs.edu/FinAid contact and see how you could get to contact one of our offices or to come to one of our offices. We have over 10 locations to service you. Well, you all have covered a lot. Like, that's not an easy topic. We thank the whole team thanks you for coming and sharing these tips. So when we come back, up next, we've talked about how to know that you're eligible for aid. We've also talked about filling out the application, but then now we're going to come back and talk about some special programs, our free degree program for high schoolers, tuition discounts, and special grants for those affected by Hurricane Harvey, and emergency aid. We're just doing a lot over here at HCC. And we'll be right back after this message.
I came here at the manufacturing lab, and it was a class. And I saw the professor and the students that were running these machines right here, and they were cutting metal. Most of it was hands-on. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is the way I learned the best. I really enjoy running these machines. First, we were learning the basics before running it, and the first time we got to cut actually machine, I was super excited. Like, I had a big smile because I was seeing metal running everywhere in the place here, and it was like, it made me more confident, more enthusiastic to keep going. That this is the thing that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I won 2 times the ICMA Workforce Scholarship. It helped me a lot because I couldn't afford to buy the materials. But as soon as we received the money, it was like a great help. I came to the HCC job fair and I met with Baker Hughes. And right away they fell in love with my enthusiasm, my passion about this, that I love it. The way manufacturing works, everything. They hired me as a full-time machinist, and they also work in my school schedule, which I'm really happy because I told them my school is first and then it's a job. I am proud to be working in the manufacturing workforce. Thank you, HCC, for everything.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We are still live covering the most asked financial aid questions and also answer your questions live. So drop those questions below either on YouTube or Facebook. So now we're going to talk about some special programs that we have at HCC because we are just out here trying to figure out how to meet your needs best. So one thing that makes Houston Community College unique is that we have a team of financial coaches that help students learn how to fund their education best, but also meet where they may have some financial gaps in emergencies. So joining me today, we have two of our financial coaches, Chanel Foster and Dan, and they are going to help me share what options that are available to fund your education that maybe perhaps they haven't considered, right?
Sure.
So the first thing, we have a free degree program that launched last year.
Nothing better than free.
Nothing better than free. Look, if I could sing, I'd sing it. Listen, earn your degree for free at HCC. So this is for recent high school graduates. So we just had our first cohort of students. The first time we did this, we had over 1,800 applications for students. Nice. And we launched it during the summertime. So that was amazing. So there are a couple things. So like it's covered either by grants or institutional aid or
Correct.
Institutional scholarships. We talked a little bit about in the last segment that when you fill out the financial aid application, you don't realize you may qualify for institutional scholarships. Right. And I know you all tell students about that. But the biggest thing is you don't have to take out loans to cover the cost of your education. Like, how often are y'all like advising students around loan debt?
All the time as students get ready to graduate, and it's in the news all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you can't go to college without $100,000 in student loans, and that's not true. A lot of people just are not aware of their options.
Right. So for recent high school graduates that meet the requirements, if they go to hccs.edu/free degree, we will be opening that next application for this year's high school graduates in March. So be on the lookout, like hit refresh, be ready to submit that application. But another thing, those are for recent high school graduates, but we have things for different types of students, right? You all are working on a program, a Hurricane Harvey recovery grant program, money we got from the Department of Education, and we're 2 years down the line in Harvey. So what are you all seeing? Are people still dealing with a lot of challenges and getting back to school with?
Absolutely, yes. They are.
Yeah, so we have a lot of students who are still recovering, as you mentioned. We meet with students all the time who lost everything, including, you know, their books, their laptops, their school supplies, not to mention their homes, cars, vehicles. Mm-hmm. So the Hurricane Harvey emergency grant is a way to help those students recover. So any students that were impacted by Harvey, they can complete that application, and then we can provide them with resources to help them get back on track.
You know, and a lot of people say we are 2 years down the line. Mm-hmm. People are still being impacted by Harvey. The storms like this take forever to recover from. About a year and a half ago, the United Way did a study here in Houston, and they estimated it to be 7 years for total recovery for the greater Houston area from that storm.
Wow.
Yeah.
They call it a 500-year storm, but then we think, oh, the recovery is just going to take a year, right? Like,
right.
Like the logic, I hadn't heard that stat before. So tell us a little bit about documentation. What does that kind of look like? What are you all looking for the Hurricane Harvey grant?
Sure. So, you know, once you fill out the application, you're probably going to get a request from one of your friendly financial coaches saying, we need some more information. You are going to need to prove to us that you did live in an impacted area. And you're going to need to prove that you did file a claim either with FEMA, your insurance company, the Red Cross, something showing that you lived at that address, that was in one of the impacted counties, and that you did incur a loss. And at that point, we'll probably talk to you about where you're currently at in that recovery process and see what your needs are.
Right. So, and one thing that they have to do too is they have to fill out a financial aid application.
They do have to have a FAFSA on file.
Or a TASFA.
Or a TASFA, correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, if you are listening and you hear and you know you got affected by Hurricane Harvey, even if you're already in school, your aid is already dispersed, you're still eligible to apply, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, y'all are handling that special grant, but there are also, we're hearing about this across the country where students are facing financial emergencies that are reasonably making them stop going to college. Right. And we're talking, $500 or less, and you're pausing, you're pursuing your degree. What are we doing to help students in those situations?
So we have what we call the Swoop to the Rescue emergency program to help those students. There's a large percentage of students who don't have at least $400 in an emergency savings account. So when something unexpected happens, that can put them in a terrible bind. So through Swoop, that program is for students who face unforeseen emergencies. We provide resources to help them overcome that challenge or that obstacle so they can stay in school and be successful. So.
That is so clutch. I don't even know what to say. And the biggest thing is if you don't know, so like we have a link when you go to financial aid and it says help with financial emergencies, and you can select that and it'll take you right to the page for the Hurricane Harvey grant
as well as the Swoop.
As well as Swoop. So don't suffer in silence. I think that's the biggest thing, and that makes it harder for you all to help when they say, hey, I'm getting evicted tomorrow. Like
the sooner you can tell us what's going on, that is helpful. I've literally had students say, yes, I'm going to court tomorrow. Can you help me not get evicted? And it's like, you probably should have talked to me 2 months ago. 2 months ago, we maybe could have helped. So the sooner a student does reach out and really anticipating problems. I'm not sure if I can pay rent next month. Talk to us right away about that.
Right.
But one thing to know is that it is for emergencies. There's a difference between an emergency and a lack of income and planning. If you can't, this is for someone who can't pay their rent that month. One time, you've had an emergency, your car's broken down, something's happened, it's a one-time issue. We want to make sure that students aren't thinking of this as, well, I can get Swoop every month and that's how I'll pay my rent for the next 2 years.
Yeah, you got to be real. That
right.
Like it's here to help, but we talked a lot about what you all are able to do for a student that's facing a financial crisis.
Correct.
But no, when they're not in a crisis, and in between that crisis, we have coaching.
Financial coaching, which is what we love to talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to add on to what Dan was saying. So an emergency, for instance, if a student can't pay their cell phone bill, that's not considered an unexpected emergency. But how we can help that student is they can come in for a one-on-one private financial coaching appointment. We can talk to them about budgeting, help them create one, and look at different spending plans and help them gain a better understanding on how to manage their money. So.
Yeah,
and beyond budgeting, which everybody needs to budget. And sometimes people say that they're not on a budget. Everybody's on a budget, whether you know it or not. You just may not be on a healthy one. But we help students also with, how do you establish credit? How does credit work? How do you improve your credit scores? Maybe you're already carrying debt. How do you manage that debt? How do you get out of debt? How do you get through school and try to keep your student loans as low as possible? How do you create an emergency savings account? We talked earlier, a student may not have $400 for a car repair. Well, let's talk about, how do you establish an emergency savings account? So when the emergency does come, you don't have to turn to a credit card, you don't have to turn to a loan, you don't have to turn to Swoop. You turn to your savings account, you turn to yourself, and you basically become your own emergency lender.
Right, yeah. If you are able to make that plan and not go to a payday loan with 18% interest rates, that's so huge. But part of that is being willing to say, hey, how can you all help? And you all have an amazing track record. Every school doesn't have financial coaches. Every school doesn't have emergency help. So you all can help students in a crisis, coach them to prevent crises. And I just think that is amazing. And I just think that's another reason you should come to HCC. So we are about out of time. Drop one financial tip you think students should know or walk away with.
I would say get a budget established. That's pretty much the foundation, because a budget can let you know instantly if you are living within your means or if you're overspending. So have a budget in place.
I would say do not take out the loans unless you need to, because loans do have to be paid back. And if you're saying, well, I'm going to go get a new wardrobe on a student loan, that student loan, that wardrobe is going to cost you a lot of money in the future.
Ooh, that's touchy. We're going to end right on that. We thank both of our financial coaches, Dan and Chanel, for coming. So we've talked about eligibility. How do you fill out the application? What separate types of special financial aid that we have available? But what happens after you submit these financial aid applications, and how do you calculate how much money you're going to get? That is up next, so make sure you stay tuned.
I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. I was a Katrina victim. I was forced to leave New Orleans. I made it to Texas. I graduated from New Orleans High School. I then attended University of Houston and majored in English and history for preparation to prepare for law school. Being a lawyer is a dream of mine because I want to be able to help underprivileged kids at risk, and be a role model for those kids. Unfortunately, I was unable to afford tuition at the University of Houston, and that's when I found out about the petroleum engineering at HCC. Working in the petroleum field will give me an opportunity to further my education because I will have the funds to pay for it. I've been working hard to achieve my dreams, and HCC has recognized my hard work and awarded me a Black History Scholarship. I've had a lot of struggles and hardships in my life, but I've learned if you continue to work hard and be consistent, you will be successful and you will be able to accomplish your dreams.
Welcome back, welcome back. We are still live and here for our last segment of the live stream. So we're going to talk about what happens after you fill out your financial aid application. Joining me here to talk about that, I have Shanetta and Sophia, who are both financial aid representatives from our campuses. So happy to have you all here.
Thank you. Welcome to be here.
Awesome. I know, maybe there's this expectation that FAFSA goes into like this black hole vortex of where we do these special calculations in the background and, just push out, how much aid these students are going to get. Is it a little bit more manual than that?
Well, yeah. I mean, for the calculation, the school determines the cost of attendance. And then that cost of attendance is subtracted from that student's EFC, which is the expected family contribution, which determines their financial need. And once we determine their financial need, that lets us know what need-based aid they can receive. So no, it's nothing magical behind the scenes. It's all calculations that's, put into place in order for us to be able to provide the students what they need, what they're eligible for.
Okay. So you talked about cost of attendance minus expected family contribution. Like you said that so casually. Go a little deeper. I mean, because these are terms that we use often in financial aid that honestly don't mean a lot to people who don't work in financial aid. So let's go a little deeper. So cost of attendance.
Cost of attendance, again, is what the school determines. And that can make up tuition and fees, your books, it could be transportation, housing allowances. So it's all that is factored in to determine a cost of attendance amount. Your program plan is also factored in there. So whatever program you're in, certificate or associate's degree, whatever your program is factored in there, and also the amount of hours that you're taking. So all that makes up that cost of attendance, and then once you complete the FAFSA, of course, determines what your expected family contribution is, which means that what the government feels that you can contribute back to your education. So that number there is subtracted from that cost of attendance, which determines what you are eligible for to receive in need-based aid.
Wow. So, I mean, a lot of people don't consider, they think we, we only consider what they have to pay to go to school, tuition, fees, books, but cost of attendance also takes into account, life.
Exactly.
Transportation, food. And so that is considered a budget that we can't award a student above, right?
Exactly. So they get up to that budget amount. So the cost of attendance is a budget up to that amount, and we can't exceed that amount. So if a student is in a situation where they need additional aid, then it goes into something else that, we can try to look into for them.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. Sounds very special circumstances.
Exactly.
We'll talk a little bit about that. So, cost of attendance, I think we have that covered. And then you subtract that from expected family contribution. Now, that term in of itself, I think everybody in the financial aid community would reasonably vote to throw it away.
Of course.
Because it's confusing.
It's very.
Because it's not necessarily what a family will have to end up paying.
Or can contribute.
Right. So it's based off of a federal formula.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So what things go into the calculation of that formula?
The income, family income. So of course, if the student work, then in the parents' work, that income is calculated in their household. How many people they're supporting in the household? How many people they're supporting in college? So all those things is factored into that calculation, which determines what their, what the government feels that they can contribute to their education.
Right. So let's say I'm trying to guesstimate how much financial aid I may reasonably qualify for. Is there like a site where you can enter in some stuff and you may be able to get?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. There's the FAFSA Forecaster, okay, the Financial Aid Student Application Forecaster, that a student can go on, plug in the information, and kind of see what they're eligible for. It won't give them exactly what they're eligible for, but it'll give them that EFC number, that expected family contribution, which in terms, they can have a conversation with a financial aid representative to kind of find out what they could qualify for based on that number.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we talked a little bit about what happens and how your financial aid is calculated, but that financial aid doesn't always automatically get calculated. Sometimes there's like this step in between there, right? So Sophia, what a student, let's say, what are the incidents, or when can a student kind of expect to have to fill out additional documentation?
Okay, well, when a student does a FAFSA, sometimes the government wants us to verify the information that the student put on there. So there could be times when the student has to submit documents, which could range from tax information to how many people are in your household, how many people in that household are in college. It could be several different things that you could be flagged for that we verify here at the school. And once we verify it, we send that information to the Department of Education so that they know that information now is correct so that we could proceed with processing the FAFSA. Good deal. So as students are having trouble filling out this documentation, one thing that it still amazes me is students don't realize we have online forms. Like, you do not have to come and physically turn in this form. You can electronically sign our forms, and so and also your parents can electronically sign that form. So that's like one benefit of how we process financial aid. So the biggest thing is, what happens when I don't fill out these documents? When you don't fill out the documents, there's nothing we can do at that point. When they're requesting those documents, those need to be submitted before you can be awarded. So until those documents are turned in, there's nothing that we could do but remind you and send you emails and try to get you to come and turn in those documents. Because usually it's basic information. It's information that you know. We just need you to confirm what you put on there. So, good deal. Yeah, I mean,
there's no reason to cause a delay. And I think the biggest thing is once you decide what school you want to go to, only fill out that documentation for one school. Like make a decision before you go through all of this. I know a lot of people may try to be comparing financial aid packages or awards at different schools. Is there some way, is there like a tool or something where they can compare better? What tips would you offer students when they're trying to compare financial aid offers?
Well, there's really the comparison portion of it is probably the institutional aid, because the federal aid, whatever school they're going to go to, based on their eligibility, they're going to get that same amount from different schools.
You mean like the need-based aid?
The need-based aid, which is the Pell Grant, and then the loans, of course. Now, any institutional aid that school offers, that may be where the comparison come in at, because based on when they apply and deadlines, all schools have different deadlines, all schools have different qualifications and criteria for getting that institutional aid. So that's where the comparison portion of it come in at, with them see what they can get from different schools.
I think another thing with that comparison is going to be the cost associated with that school, because you
Yeah.
may get awarded a lot of money, but it may not go as far at a different institution.
That's correct.
Luckily, we have very reasonably priced tuition and fees.
Exactly.
And there's actually on our website, there's a tuition calculator where you can go in and estimate, you know, the amount of hours that you're going to take, as well as whether you're in district or out of district student, because that can affect the cost of your classes as well. So I would encourage students to not only look at what they're awarded at different schools with that institutional aid, but to look and see what the costs are going to be to attend that.
School.
Yes,
Correct.
yes. Like the same money does not go
That's
the
right.
same.
Exactly.
Right. So that's the biggest thing. Now, I fill out my financial aid application. We talked about it opening up in October, but we also talked about how we are using tax information from prior years, right? That kind of throws some people off sometimes. So my financial situation may have changed since, for 2021, this upcoming August, we're using 2018 tax information. My financial situation may have changed now that it is 2020. What should I do when something like that happens?
Well, usually a student will come in, of course, have a conversation with a financial aid representative, and based on what that conversation is, the representative may inform them about our special circumstance. Special circumstance can be a little bit of anything. Sometimes parents will lose their job. Sometimes there's a spouse that'll pass away, or a divorce, or just a lot of medical bills or something. So with that special circumstance, they will complete that, fill that out, of course, provide documentation, and then we will review that to see if anything could change within their financial aid.
So the best, a lot of times, and just based off of the laws that govern financial aid, there's not like this very bulleted list of saying these are the only reasons you can have. It's considered almost an adjustment.
It's considered a professional judgment. So, of course, we're making that judgment based on what they're providing to us and deciding if, anything could change based on the information they're given.
Right. One thing that we kind of anticipate too, with the 2017 tax information, that was the year Hurricane Harvey hit.
Exactly.
So if students and families were dealing with loss during that time, that may have changed their financial situation. Those are kind of incidents. But we also have the Hurricane Harvey Recovery Grant that can fill that. Now, special circumstances beyond income changes. We talked about what does it mean to be a dependent and independent student. There are situations that may be tough for a student to disclose when they are considered a dependent because they're younger than 24 years old, but their relationship with their parents, for lack of better words, may be toxic. Like what situations, when students are facing those types of things, do we consider maybe excluding having to have their parents' income on the FAFSA?
Yeah, well, that's also going to be another professional judgment, what we call a dependency override. And that's when a student is in a situation where, they don't have that information for their parents. They're not in contact with them. They don't, have that relationship. And then But of course, the 24-year-old age limit, we can actually override that with the professional judgment, but that entails a lot of information from the student. So they would have to, type up a statement explaining exactly what happened in their situation, as well as provide letters from 3 outside sources who can verify exactly what happened at that time. And then we would review it from there, but each student's going to be different. Every situation is different. It's just up to us and the student when they provide that information to make a decision on whether or not we can make that student an independent student.
So, I mean, a lot of this is just, not taking that first step to disclose, right? We are humans. We calculate financial aid, but we are humans, and we will definitely hear them out and tell them their next steps. So I want to make sure that everyone knew those options. So moving a little bit beyond that, I got my financial aid package. Now what? So one thing that we've been pushing really, really hard is taking classes in your program plan. Exactly. Because, we want you to finish. So, but the biggest thing, come around that 30-day range after classes start. And we have a lot of start dates. What are students asking about?
Refund.
Where's my money?
So, biggest thing, tell someone the difference between a disbursement and a refund.
A disbursement is when we pay for your classes. So when we send out that email and say we've dispersed your aid, it's paying for any charges that's still left on your account. And that's for tuition and fees, books, whatever you may have charges for. That's that balance on your account. And then when we send you that email the next time, that's refund, which means that any credits that's on your account will go to you based on what is left available in your financial aid.
Good deal. So they're going to show that they owe money until that aid disperses. I know a lot of students are saying, like, why does it still show I owe when I have financial aid?
Yes.
So I got my money. How can I make sure I keep getting money?
Well, that's going to be really important. We have to make sure that the student is progressing within their degree. So they have to maintain certain requirements in order to be eligible for that financial aid for the next semester. So at the end of each semester, once the grades have posted, we review 3 different things for the student. We'll look at their GPA, and when we look at GPA, we're looking at everything. So every course that the student has had at HCC, we're going to do the cumulative GPA, and it needs to be at least a 2.0. We also require students complete 67% of the classes that they attempt. Now, when I say attempt, that means everything. So any incompletes, withdrawals, fails, that is going to count in your attempted. And we will look at that, and you need to complete at least 67% of those classes. And we also look at maximum time frame. That one's usually a little confusing for students because it looks at your credit hours. So for instance, for a student who's taken an associate's that, let's say it's 60 credit hours, we're going to look at completion rate, which is going to, or not completion rate, sorry guys, maximum time frame, which is 150% of that program. So let's say you do 60 credit hours and multiply that by 1.5, and that will give you 90. So once you hit 90 credit hours, that's when we're going to start monitoring you for that maximum time frame. So it adjusts based on the program, whether you're doing your certificate, associates. Even when students go on to complete their bachelor's degrees, they're going to get monitored for that maximum time frame. And once you hit 90, your financial aid actually stops, and you have to try to appeal to get that back. The appeal is called the SAP appeal, or the Satisfactory Academic Progress, which is something the federal government requires us to monitor for students. And you're able to try to regain your eligibility once you meet those requirements, but you have to appeal and explain what happened, why, provide proof, so that we can hold on to that documentation and possibly be able to approve you for more financial aid. So we want students to graduate. We want them to complete their courses in a timely manner, because that aid does not last forever.
Right. And
That's so true.
And I know we're almost out of time, but the biggest thing, if you're going to drop a class, talk to financial aid.
Exactly.
If you're dropping a class to try to save your GPA, you may get hit with the percentage, right? But lifetime eligibility.
That's important.
Yeah, so you cannot, like, we may have to do a whole nother segment on this, but we want students to understand that you cannot, 6 years of Pell?
600% of Pell Grant, which is
6 full time?
equal to about 6 years if you're going 100%, if you're using 100% of your financial aid. So
Right.
6 years is not a long time, especially if you spend a lot of time at a community college and then transfer to a university. You can typically use up all your Pell lifetime.
And with loans, there's
And loans
like-
is the same thing. Yes.
So go talk to a financial aid officer or representative if you know you are almost close, or you've been going to school for a while and you don't know if you're tinkering on the edge. Thank you,
Yes,
Shanetta.
yes.
Thank you, Sophia.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
to all of our guests. We have covered a wide range of topics on financial aid, and we really, really hope we help somebody today. Hit the share button. Share this, share the playback, and say, hey, I got some free game. I want to share this with you. Don't be stingy, okay? So, also, we are wrapping up this live stream, but every Friday at 10 a.m., we provide tips on Financial Aid Fridays going live through Facebook and YouTube. If you want more information about financial aid, please visit hccs.edu/financial aid. Thanks for joining us. Man, right?